I told you before we started recording that from my generation I was never given a chance to have a lot of contacts with other communities, and I did not learn the language at school and stuff like that. But I understand Serbian. I speak poorly, but I do speak in my version. But it was not the level to understand the literature, you know. And I was always curious to know literature and artists and what was written about the city and the active members of the city and stuff like that. And I told her what we were doing, and we saw that meeting point was literature. And I told her I am doing this and this and this. And I said, are you interested to do like 2 parts of the city, so let's exchange literature. And she was very happy with that, because she and her husband Alexander are already doing what they're doing. And they were also curious to read Albanian literature. And Zona was just a name because it was done from Demetra, so all of our names are female. You know, Demetra is the foundation we created with my colleagues here, like because of museum, because museums still don't have a law in Kosovo. So when you don't have a law, you don't have a chance to apply for funds, and it's like really complicated and messy story. So we founded this Demetra Foundation to help work with what we work, you know. So it will be easier for us to apply for grants and to have like opportunities brought here. And then Demetra was how we applied for Zona, and like Mirjana liked the name, and it was funny because like Zona used to be a very famous rock and roll band in Yugoslavia, and it was named after Zoran Imani, that was the leader singer, and it was a mixed like band, and it was funny connection. But the name is Albanian and it's to the fairies. It's like villa. And yeah, she agreed that we shouldn't change because it's catchy and it's interesting and stuff like that. So like she was doing her part of research for the Serbian literature, and I was doing for the Albanian. And together we did the first edition of literature, the festival. Like it was very hard, pandemic times, you know, like horrible timing. But it was very beautiful, and it's like something like I was very nervous in the beginning. She was nervous also. Like this is, I think, one of the first like inner connections, you know. And I told you before, like even though I work with art and culture for 12 years now in Mitrovica, like I never wanted that to be like something that was done because of like materialistic approach, you know, because we have lots of NGOs here that are founded from internationals or from people that are not from here, and like they are supervising, and you know, even though that's good in a certain point of view, but in one point we have to just be here, you know. And I was going to Aquarius, she was coming to museum, and we were discussing and doing this and that, and she's a great artist, you know, she's a great artist, and she was doing hers and I was doing mine, and like it was very tough timing because most of everything was done online. But we produced like 4 things, and the production is beautiful. It's very good because like we had 2 poetry events that was done in RTK, like RTK. So one was in Albanian, the other was in Serbian. So this is interesting because poets was being translated, and like we have exactly the same edition, you know, because it was supposed to be like that, and it was supposed to be females in different role, like these authors we chose, and it was like very beautiful. We played with like scenography and our costumography, so it was symbolic to represent like 20th century approach, you know, like, and it was all recorded and screened in Aquarius, and we were all mixed, you know. It was so funny because that wasn't even the case there, you know. Like we were just doing our job, all of us, and we were so excited, you know, for everything to be beautiful, you know, like music and everything. So when I was like just reading like Titra, it's like the subtitles of, and it was like, oh my God, nobody did this before, you know, like with that amount of love, you know, like that amount of devotion to produce something beautiful. And I'm very proud of it. Like I'm very proud of what we produced. And I was very skeptical how people here are gonna accept it, you know, like how people here are gonna react about it. And so far in Mitrovica, nobody said anything, because Mitrovica is the red spot, let's say. I heard like a lot of criticism about the approach of females and stuff like that. And we always embrace criticism, because if there's nothing to be criticized, then it means we didn't do anything. So we're proud so far.
No, but why the woman was the focal point of the poetry? Why did you decide to be like that?
First of all, we were two women who organized this. Like both of us, like, are women that have voice in our communities. Like it's like we push a lot of other young women to have a voice. That's the mission of Miliana, probably. Even though we never discuss it in this focal point, but I know her and I know what she's doing. So yeah, and it goes the same for me here. So for us, it was discovering female poets, and that was not really the case, because there were more male poets that were producing back in 20s and being writers. So Albanians that we chose are only men. In Serbian, we have two females. And even though we could not make that balance, and we said the balance is just to see what they wrote about women, because we wanted to see the portrait of women back in the time. This is not like this, say, like directly feminist festival, but it's indirectly focused on women. So our focus was like names, all with females. We have a mural, and it's called Što iz Ovale, which is Sisters of Vila fairies. So it's like all mythology, but it's like advocating for the female portrait on public space, which we don't have here, and it was the hardest thing to do was the mural, because there were no spaces, like no walls and no permission, because I don't know, we're still not educated in this level. I think people are afraid of drawings, but everybody who saw it, then it was like, whoa, beautiful. And like it's like all women to be like, let's say, to strengthen the portrait of women as leaders, as decision makers, as artists and stuff like that. And it was funny for us, because like we were skeptical about the literature, like skeptical because we didn't know each other, and I was expecting something, I don't even know what, but when like we had two translators that are like really like experienced in the field. Shkelzen Malici is really famous guy, and also Bayram Fadil Boyra is also a guy who was working with this forever. So we didn't want to take a chance, because poetry to be translated is very tough and it's very delicate, And when I read all like the Serbian like poets, and it was like not so different, because it was the same era, and like the research brought also to another knowledge, for example, that during the 20th century there were a lot of like writer associations that were mixed.
Yeah.
And they were also printing and like publishing together. So somehow we are not something new. We're just continuing something that used to exist. But I think the different element is woman here. So for woman is maybe that we're organizing this is maybe something new. But it was really interesting, and we're trying to do the second edition now.
Mm-hmm.
But pandemics like made everything more slow. But we were like planning to have an international festival of literature, again focus woman, of course, but we're still waiting for some fundraising, because when you do stuff like this you need translation, and translation is the biggest cost, and then to publish a book also takes a lot of time and a lot of work. So hopefully we can do it. But another fact with Miliana, what I want to share is like I'm so used to do like events for free, like usually everything we do is like with no money and just a lot of effort, but just to bring people closer to culture and education and to our institution. And I asked her like, hey, I said, usually I never get funds for stuff like that. She said, we will do it with no money. And that was it, and this is what we say to each other now, like even if we don't get support, we will do it, and that's it. And I know that we will do it because that's who she is and that's who I am. And this is how it's supposed to be, in our fields, like we're artists, and if we don't have like heart to do stuff like this with no profit, then we're no artists at all. Because artists needs reality and we need the truth, and if we're not ready to face it, then we're not called that anymore.
We have a lot of sayings like art is universal language, those kind of stuff. But really, when it comes to the a crucial example for it, we don't really know what to say about it. So, once again, are the art and culture the means of reconciliation and trust building and peace, maybe?
In my personal experience, like for me, was curiosity. First of all, like I was curious to know, you know, like to read. Like I'm always like in hunt to read like novels about Mitrovica, like in artistic way how Mitrovica was described, like, and I still didn't find it. Imagine, I know that there is probably like lots of literature is in Cyrillic. I still don't read Cyrillic, but yeah, like we're trying to do like at museum, like we have this like fund of books that is called the books of Vendinja. How to say it, like of your hometown, you know, like because we collect everything we found that was written about Mitrovica. So for me, in my personal experience, it was firstly about curiosity, and then when you like connect, you know, like one of my first friends was like Ljubisha, you know, like Ljubisha with long hair, Basharevich, and like I was interviewing him about my thesis. And he knew my father, he knew my sister, he knew the bar of my dad. It used to be one of the first bars close to Nazis, like the flower shop. And like we had so much in common, you know, like, and he knew this Varigona band and they were playing together. And then the second story, when I was in Aquarius, we were hearing the story of big band musicians, you know, like for me as a museum girl, you know, like that's the story, you know, like how Mitrovica had one of the first big bands, you know, with jazz musicians. For me, art is like the only language. I don't have specific answers, like there are more like complicated answers. People always said that we should always look our like mutual parts to become together. I don't think that. I think that when people are different, it's even more special, you know, like diversity makes interesting. And this is why Mitrovica was interesting before, because it was diverse. This is why New York is interesting, because you hear 20 languages on a metro ride. And I don't know, I don't like same, you know, I like different approaches. And so art is something that can be done purely, you know, like purely. It's not politics, it's something that comes from within. It comes from the soul, and it's true. And when something is true, it breaks like prejudice, it breaks stereotypes, and like, you know, it's confrontation. And it's funny, like for example, because this work that was done like really purely, you know, like it was hard work, and that's why like I'm very proud of it. And it's a really small thing we did, like it's 3 stuff, like we have a web page, we have books, we have a mural, and 2 poetry events that are, but it took so much work to bring till that point, you know. And it's true and it's real, and we were so happy when stuff turned out to be how they turned out to be, and we owned what we did, you know. And I think that was the language. And even though it was like the first time for me to have produced something like this and to have a cooperation, but I believe that basically the art that we produced together like was our biggest connection point, you know. And of course, like you know, because I have to share this story, like at the beginning when I started to do all of this, like the daughter of Latif Berisha, the poet that was killed during the war, she used to be my teacher in gymnasium, and she helped me a lot to be free as a person I was. Like I was always really straightforward with my answers, and I was very like loud with my existence. And she was always fond of that in me. Like she really helped me become myself, and she was very, very happy that I was writing and painting, and she actually like brought a lot of light in my life. And when I started this, like I don't know how they would feel to have a book mixed, you know, with a poet that was killed, you know, during the war. And I called her and I said, if you don't feel comfortable, I will never do it, you know.
What was the answer?
And the answer is the answer to your question. And she said, you can never see people with tails. You can only see people as people. And I only think that the artists are capable to open the doors that no ordinary people cannot. And she said, I will always be expecting stuff like that from you. And she helped me so much, like when I was not totally myself as a kid. And she was also an inspiration to this production. So my dedication in the beginning of the book is for her, you know, like she is Zana for me, you know, like, and she was Zana for me before I knew myself, you know, because even though what she experienced, like she was there when her father was killed in their house, you know, but she never taught us with hate, you know, like, and if like she is to have all the like the credits for all of that because she's a teacher and teachers change the world, you know, and art changed the world also. So she's like, when we published the book, we did like this event, and I publicly like dedicated this edition to her, you know, because like she was never with hateful speech, you know, like it's so easy to have hateful speech in Mitrovica for all of us, you know, we all have stories, you know, but when a person like that, like they just cross themselves and their story for the greater good, then we are very little to not embrace that, you know. So I believe that art and honesty and open-mindedness, like that art produces, because that's what art is, it has to like challenge, it has to challenge you from within. So without that, there can never be the change of the world.
Such a beautiful message. I would really finish it with it, but if you want to add something, because it was really interesting, if there is anything that you want to add, some kind of message or whatever you want.
I would just like ask for citizens of this place, this city, to embrace whoever they are, first of all, and embrace that this is the city of everybody. It doesn't have like a proper name that belongs to like a specific community, you know, because in time, if you understand that there were always different people living in Mitrovica, and this is what it was famous for. Like when I'm somewhere else, except Trepča, except the bridge now, and as a new identity, people say that Mitrovica's people are very hospitable, you know, like very kind and hospitable in both parts, you know. And I believe that we are hospitable because we're used to have other people come here, and we have to just free our soul, you know, free ourselves. We don't have to specifically forgive everything, you know, but we have to just understand that when there's like a lot of unity, there are always tensions, you know, and we cannot say bravo to tensions and conflicts and war, because there were lots of wars in Balkan during that dark decade. But we have just to understand that not everybody was the face of the war, and there are actually people who are trying to do stuff. And visit museums and search for history and search for like approaches, because we live on digital era and everything is there, like information is there. Just not one approach only, you know, like we're supposed to be more clever now with all this data everywhere, you know. And unfortunately, I still don't see that in both parts of our city, you know. I see youngsters that are very stuck on really like fragrances of truth, you know, like troha, we say, troše. Yeah, troške. It's like, that's nothing, like search more and search for yourself, because the more you know, the more free you will become. Like, that's my message, like search and find yourselves. And love the city, like the city is us. We are the city, not, the city doesn't owe us anything. We owe the city everything.